Hi, today I'm gonna show you how to knit this Raglan Christmas sweater with color work. This is part 2 of 2. If you haven't watched the part 1 video, please go down to my description box. There's the links. One for the part 1 video and one for my website. If you go to my website, you can download my free written pattern. With this project, definitely you need written pattern. So get ready and let's get started. Okay, in the part 1 video, I talk about the increasing with the color work, and I repeated 2 times of complete 16th row, and the third time I stop right on row number 12. And Raglan line is just about 8.5 inch, and that's good enough for me. Again, I want you to stop right on the increasing row, which is even number of the row. So obviously, next row should be for me row number 13. And that's the where I start, and that's my sleeve, right? The right side. And then this is my front piece. How did I know? Because the back part I have a little raised. And then after the front piece, that's another sleeve, then back piece. So now I am going to take sleeve away. Then I am going to add few stitch under armpit, then connect, then knit only body part. And this connection part is a little bit tricky. And I want you to know the rule number 1 is I want to carry the pattern, continue the pattern. And then after this increasing, the pattern changes a little bit. From now on, I only need multiple of 8, the group of 8 pattern. That's all I need, which is from here to there. It's really hard to see, but I'll show you. And you don't really need to know, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. So with the increasing, you need the stitch count multiple of 8 plus 3. And from now on, after the increase, I need only group of 8. No more plus 3. Right there. That's the group of 8. And this is the key. And this is going to be my new begin. And then the first few stitch. Actually, I have a 7 stitch there, which is incomplete group of 8. Right? 7. And the other side actually complete. And some people don't quite understand what I'm talking about. But don't worry, as long as you have my written pattern, you will be able to figure it out because I did everything for you. Don't worry about it. Anyway, these 7 stitch is incomplete. I need 8, which means I have to add 1 stitch. Same as the back piece. And the other side, I said I complete group of 8, which means I'm going to add 0 stitch. Can you grab my written pattern? Under separate sleeves from yoke, there's all bunch of the numbers. For me, row 13, it says 1 stitch, which means I have to add 1 stitch, both side. Okay, let's say row number 5 and 6. 5 is 9 and row number 6 is 7. So that's how many stitch you have to add for each side. So row number 13 for me, 1 stitch, which means I am going to add 1 stitch under the armpit for connection part. But 1 stitch is too small. So I want to add more. And if you want to add more, you have to add multiple of 8. I'm going to add 8 more. The total of 9. That's actually big enough for armpit. So again, if your stitch number is 3 or 5, if this is too small, you have to add 18 or 16. Anyway, if you don't quite understand, don't worry. Just grab the written pattern and check your next row. And whatever the number at the very end, that's how many stitch you have to add for connection part, which is under the armpit. Okay, if your row is finish on row number 2 and next is row number 3, which is you have to add 11 stitch, and if you finish on row number 4, 9 stitch, something like that. All right, so let's move on. First of all, you have to transfer all the sleeve stitch onto scrap yarn. Scrap yarn would be better because it's more flexible. So just transfer onto scrap yarn for now because I want to finish the body first. And then after transfer all the stitch, the body starts. After you transfer all the sleeve stitch, just tie the knot and leave it there. And let's start connection part. That's my new begin in between back and front piece. And let's see the pattern again. Row number 13 is my next. And these pattern, the Whitson bracket, is group of 8. And after that pattern, it says D1. And D1 goes to front of the group of 8 pattern, and 0 goes to after the pattern. That's how you read. So let's say row number 10, white 1 and D1. Those 2 stitch goes to in front of the 8, and D1 is after the group of 8. That's how you read. That's actually missing stitch. So first of all, I want you to know that side is end of the pattern. Looks like, the beginning of the pattern, but it's end of the pattern. And this side is beginning of the pattern because I'm knitting from right to left. And what about this side? Same thing. That's end of the pattern, and this side is the beginning of the pattern after I take the sleeve away. So now I have to add the end of the stitch first, which is 0 for me because the end of the pattern, I finish right on the group of 8. So the pattern says 0, but I said I want to add extra 8, which is with some bracket. D2, dark 2, white 1, dark 3, white 1, and dark 1. That's my group of 8 for next row. So first of all, I add 0 stitch for the back part. 0 stitch means 0. And then I'm gonna add extra 8, which is group of 8. So group of 8 for row number 13 is with some bracket. So let's do that. Just add in new cast, followed by the pattern. D2, just take your time. This is a little bit tough part. And white 1, there we go. And then grab red 1 and D3. I'm adding my extra 8. And white 1. Then last D1. These are the extra 8. If you're not going to add 8 extra, just add the last stitch, whichever it says. I'm making sure I add 8. There you go. That's my extra 8. And then now I have to add first missing stitch. All right? So, which is D1 because that's the beginning of the pattern, right? And I have 1 stitch missing, which is D1. See, within the bracket, supposed to be D2 to start, but I have only 7 stitch, so I just add the D1. Now, group of 8 has been complete. Okay? And I'm gonna move on rest of the row 13. I hope you understand. And now it's easy. Row number 13 is, it's not increasing row. It's the same stitch as previous row, right? Do you remember increasing row? You have to do whatever pattern says, but following rows, you just have to do same stitch color as before. So just keep going until the other side of the sleeve. Again, it says this is odd number of row is same as previous row. So if it's white stitch, just knit with white. If it's red, knit with red. And this is the reason why I told you I want you to stop right on the increasing row. You know, make things a little easier. And increasing row is even number of row, right? Anyway, once you reach the other side of the sleeve, again, you have to transfer all the sleeve stitch first onto scrap yarn. And then you do exactly same cast on, which you probably know, but I am going to explain a little bit more detail for just in case, because this is very important. Okay, it's done. I'm gonna make sure one more time, this is end of the pattern. and the other side is beginning of the pattern. And I'm going to tell you with different rows for just in case. Let's say I finish on row number 4 and next is row number 5. Row number 5, I need to add 9 new cast and always go with the end of the pattern, those 4 first, and then beginning of the pattern. Those numbers are missing stitch count to complete group of 8 pattern. All right, so D2, white 1, and D1, then D2, white 1, and D2, total of 9 stitch. Okay, what about row number 10? Finish row number 10 and next is row number 11, 3 stitch. If you think 3 stitches enough, you just add D1, white 1, and D1. That's it. However, 3 stitches not enough and you want to add 8 extra, you do D1 and then extra 8 from the bracket, then add white 1 and D1. Total of 11, right? Because this is end of the pattern. So always go with end first, then add missing stitch for begin. So what about mine? 0 for end, but extra 8, so with some bracket, then D1 for the begin, right? So again, I am going to add 0 stitch, then extra 8, which is with some bracket. So let's do that again. D2 and 1 white, then D3. Next, 1 white, then D1. I'm fixing right now. So D1, then, I mean white 1 and D1. Then this is just an extra 8. And I have to add one more missing stitch for begin. So D1. Total of 9 stitch I just added. Then this is still row number 13. Right? Because the other side is the real begin. Right? So again, row number 13. Same stitch color as one before. So if it's red, just knit with red and keep going until the other side. Okay, this is the other side of the sleeve again, which means end of row 13 for me. Now you have to do one thing. You have to find where the new begin is, which is end of the row 13. For me, it's easy because, the end of the pattern, the back piece or front piece, it was complete group of 8. So you just have to find where the end of group of 8 near the new cast, right? And then start next row. If you're not stopping row number 12, starting on the row number 13 for the connection, everybody has a little bit of the leftovers, right? So make sure we're the last group of 8. And then add the begin marker and start row 14 or your next row. Easiest way to think where you have to replace the begin marker is after you're adding missing stitch count for the end of the pattern. You have to add begin marker because that's end of the group of 8. Okay, so let me tell you. For me, 0 for missing stitch for the end of the pattern. So right after the back piece or whatever, I just add begin marker. What about row number 9? So the missing stitch is 2 at the back, right? So after you add D1 and white one, you put begin marker. That's how you think. Anyway, after this, just keep knitting, following my written instruction with pattern of 8 until your desired length. For me, again, every 16th row, I change the yarn. So I finish until row 16 and coming back to row number 1, and I'm changing the color of yarn. It's up to you. You can use only 2 color, red and white or green and white. It doesn't really matter. All right. And then I am going to finish the body part. All right. So I'm done for the body. Now I'm going to do the rib. Before I start ribbing, I'm gonna change the needle from 5 millimeter to 4.5 millimeter, half size down. And I'm going to change the color of yarn again. I finished with the color work with green, so the rib should be red. So I am going to knit 1 round with red. If you change the color, please do not start ribbing right away. Do you know why? Because when you change the color and start ribbing, the purl stitch is very visible, which I don't like. So knit 1 round with different color first. There you go. Change the color, and then no more color work. Just knit with red yarn. That's about it. So it wasn't that hard, except the armpit area. But once you understand, you probably, feel comfortable to knit this sweater. Anyway, almost end of the row. I'm actually making purl, and I just want to show you. If you, there you go, make a purl with different color, that purl stitch is showing, and I don't really like it. So just knit 1 row, so there's no green, purl stitch showing, right? And then start making rib, which is same as neck. So repeat off, knit 1 and purl 1. And the stitch count should be multiple of 2 because group of 8 is multiple of 2 as well. So this is all good. You don't have to adjust the stitch count or anything. So just knit 1 and purl 1. And I'm going to add 16 row. So same as the color work. So it's good balance, right? And from the second row, easy. Just knit over knit stitch and purl over purl stitch. And I meet you at the end of the rib. And after the body, I'll show you how to knit the sleeve. The important part is under armpit. That's about it. And this is end of the body rib. And before I cast on, cast off, I am going to change the needle. Only one side, the right needle. Needle I will be using is 5mm back on again. Little bigger size of the needle, use little bit more fabric, which means it's gonna be a little bit stretchy. I don't really like the very tight end. You know, it's not comfortable, right? So stretchy cast off would be good idea. And this technique I'm gonna use for the sleeve as well. So let's move on. And before we start making the sleeve, I'm gonna show you what it's really like now. It's done. I add 16 row for rib, and then this is stretchy, which is good, and it's not really wavy. So again, after the increasing row, there's no more increase. All right, and then I actually finished the one sleeve, and the wrist part I did the stretchy cast off as well. And I want to show you before we start knitting sleeve the pattern after the connection. It's beautiful there. It's beautifully done connecting. So the pattern is carry on, continued. So, and same as sleeves. That's what I'm going to tell you now. And one more thing for the sleeve. At first, I was gonna decrease some stitch for the sleeves, but I didn't because I didn't want to ruin the pattern. So that means I am going to decrease at the wrist. So it's a little bit like a balloon sleeve, but you know, hey, this is Christmas sweater. It's cute. Even for boys, you know, it's cute, right? Anyway, so let's move on to the other side of the sleeve. First of all, you have to transfer all the sleeve stitch onto needle. And this is same as the body part. I use 5mm needle. And then now I am going to knit up around that armpit area. And before that, I want you to add one stitch marker. Add one marker before the last stitch right there. Use the clip-on marker, and if you don't, you can use the scrap yarn and prepare one more clip-on marker. And let's knit up. And this time, I want you to knit up exactly same number you add for the connection plus 2 extra. So I add 9 stitch earlier, so another extra 2. So I am going to knit up 11 stitch. So the stitch count you add the cast on earlier plus 2 extra. So for me, 9 plus 2 equal 11 stitch. Okay, this is important. 11 stitch I am going to knit up with red color, whichever the color you're using, that part. For me, red. The reason why I add the 2 extra, because that way I can avoid little gap right there and right there. And I can't really close, but I can avoid the little gap. So this is important. But the easy part is I'm going to use only one color of yarn. That's it. So I am actually leave the long end tail for just in case, I have to close up little, gap later on. So this is one knit up facing to right side of the project and knit up second and third. Just take your time because it's kind of loose. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So 9, 10. One more stitch, right? And before one more stitch, I have to add marker. There we go. I just knit up 10 stitch, right? And add marker and then knit up last one. For me, 11th knit up stitch. So after this last knit up stitch, next one is the first original stitch. And this is what I'm going to do. I add 2 extra. And on next row, I am going to decrease using SSK and knit two together. Then close the gap right there. So ended up, it's going to be 9 stitch total. Add 2 extra and then decrease those 2 extra on next row. Okay, so let's go back to my written pattern. I finished with row number 12. Next is row number 13. And row number 13 is same as row number 12. So it's actually quite easy. However, I just want to tell you row 13 and row 12 is starting with dark 2. However, there's only dark 1. Why? Because I told you the first few stitch and last few stitch is incomplete of group of 8. And then I add few stitch to complete of group of 8. Fortunately, my end of the group is complete, so I just add 1 and then extra 8, right? So that's the part you have to be careful for the sleeve. So let's actually try. First of all, on the row 13, same as one previous row, right? So I just have to knit same color as before. So now I'm going to use white color of yarn. So if it's red, use red yarn. And if it's white, just knit with white. Easy. You don't really have to think too much, right? That's the reason why I told you to stop on increasing row. So next is just easy, follow the color. So just knit until the first marker. All right, so first of all, I have to think where I add my marker. After the marker, there's one last stitch for me, right? Which is supposed to be dark 1. So just keep continuing, and this is last white one, and there's one stitch left because this side, the end of the pattern side, my pattern complete with next stitch, and then I have to do SSK, right? So slip, slip, knit. The last stitch and first knit up stitch now combine together with my last stitch with dark color, the red color. So you really have to think this SSK stitch is what's your stitch. Maybe in the middle, maybe the third from the end. I don't know. Depend on where you at, right? So for me, it's easy because that was the end of the group of 8. So next marker, okay, that's gonna be second stitch of group of 8. So the before, one stitch before the marker is the first stitch of group of 8. So I am actually making sure, okay, after the marker, I'm going to, okay, this one and this one going to decrease from 2 to 1. And that's going to be second stitch of group of 8. So one more stitch Then I just add the, the green marker, right? That's gonna be the first stitch of group of 8. So the green marker should be my begin marker, okay? So that's the part a little bit harder to think. But you should be able to figure it out. Anyway, I have 8 more stitch there because I add extra 8, right? So now I am going to continue on row 13 because do you remember the green marker is my new begin. So that's where row number 14 starts. So these 8 stitch should be on row number 13. And dark 3, then white, 1 white and 1 dark. So this is gotta be bingo, right? I'm adding the marker. However, it wasn't necessary. I just want to, add the marker for counting purpose. I just want to make sure. So next should be 1 white. Yep. Then last one. There we go. So the green marker, which means new begin marker. I'm just telling you, it's all, a group of 8. That's about it. And remove the green marker and change the real begin marker. Okay, so next is row number 14. And row 14, I have to start with dark 1, right? Oops. So take your time. Row number 14, dark 1. And then after the orange marker, I have to do knit 2 together to decrease. So second stitch right there is white 1, right? So knit 2 together with white 1 because this is going to be the second stitch of the row number 14 for me. And then the pattern carry on, dark 2 dark and 1 white. It was a little bit tricky, wasn't it? But please think carefully. I just want to carry on the pattern. I don't want to ruin the pattern. So I just want to find missing stitch and add those missing stitch. And if you want, you can add another 8 stitch in between. That's about it. So the whole stitch count should be multiple of 8 now. If it's not multiple of 8, you did something wrong. And again, that armpit area, you have to think 2 things. 1, where is the end of the row? 2, where is the beginning of the row? And if you want to know, if you, get confused, check the previous rows and match, right? Then you figured it out, where is the beginning of group of 8. That's pretty much it. keep knitting until your desired length, same as body. And there we go. I just knit the group of 8 until desired length, right? Now I have to find out how many stitch I want to decrease for the wrist. And this is what I did. First of all, the whole stitch count for my sleeve is 64. And use the bottom of the body rib, wrap that like that, and count stitches. And there were some like 30 something. So I decide I am going to decrease into half stitch. So 64 divided by 2 is 32. In other words, I just have to do the knit two together all around. And before I do that, there you go, change the needle down to 4.5 millimeter from 5 millimeter. And then knit two together, repeat of knit two together, one row. So if you don't want to decrease into half, you can do a repeat of knit one, knit two together, repeat of knit one, knit two together, stuff like that. Or it's really up to you. You just have to decrease evenly, like, knit two, then knit two together, repeat, something like that. Or you want to decrease more, you can do one more round to decrease. It's really up to you. So again, for me, repeat of knit two together with red yarn, because I'm going to change the color of yarn. And if you're not gonna, decrease any of the stitch for the wrist, that's fine. However, if you're changing the color of yarn, you have to knit one round and then start the making rib. Because I told you earlier, I don't want the purl stitch, tub, showing off. So decrease, whether decrease or not, okay, knit one round. And then this should be multiple of 2 stitch count. If not, you have to adjust, because the rib should be repeat of knit 1 and purl 1, so stitch count should be multiple of 2. Okay, and same as before, you just have to be very careful on the first row. From second row, you just have to knit over knit stitch and purl over purl stitch until your desired length. And I did 16 row. And I used the stretchy cast off technique, which is just changing the needle. That's about it, right? Almost there. Hang in there. So, what do you think about this sweater? Is it tough? Well, yes and no. The overall, it's easy, right? Just around the armpit area, that's the toughest part. And second, the increasing part. But increasing part, if you follow my written instruction, it's not that hard, right? Okay, anyway, I guess I'm done with the ribbon. So I changed the needle, just the one needle, which is right side. Using the bigger needle to cast off, the bind off, which means you're using a little bit more yarn, right? That gives you little stretchy. But if you're using much bigger size, like a 2 size up or whatever, it's gonna be too loose, then a little wavy. So half to 1 size up is ideal. So if it's knit, knit, then bind off. And if it's purl, make a purl, then bind off. Okay, knit, bind off. And if it's purl, yarn front and then purl. Then before you bind off, yarn back and then bind off. This is much easier. If the yarn is front, it's really hard to bind off. Right? So next stitch should be knit. So, yarn back and then bind off. All right? And keep doing until the end. There we go. It's done. And do you know what? The most difficult part for me is now weave all the ends off. I really hate it, but I have to. Especially, I change so many colors, right? And 16 rows, I can't carry the yarn, right, to the next, the 16th row. So that's, the hardest part for me, to weave all of the ends off. Anyway, whenever you weave the ends off around the armpit area, if there's big gap left over, you can actually kind of sew them and, a little close them together. And my gap is not that bad. That's about it. It was a little bit tough for me to explain. I hope you understand. And if you don't, please leave the comment below. Ask me anything. I tried to, explain it to you better way, hopefully. All right. So thank you for watching. Good luck with your Christmas sweater and enjoy knitting. Bye for now.